Imagine a creature built for the frozen edge of the world. An apex predator designed by evolution to thrive where temperatures plummet to -50 degrees, where ice stretches endlessly in every direction, and where the sun disappears for months at a time. Now, picture that same creature standing at the threshold of Earth's greatest biological furnace, the Amazon rainforest, where humidity chokes the air at 90%, where temperatures soar above 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and where more species compete for survival in a single square mile than exist in the entire Arctic. Could a polar bear, nature's most formidable ice hunter, find a way to survive in the planet's most diverse and unforgiving tropical jungle? This is not a question of courage or strength. This is a question of biology, adaptation, and the cruel mathematics of evolution. Before we continue, take a moment to join the Beyond Habitat community. If you're fascinated by extreme survival, biological limits, and the raw science behind nature's most powerful creatures, make sure to subscribe. Leave a like to support the channel. It truly helps these documentaries reach more people. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from, city and country? Our audience spans the globe, and we'd love to see how far this story travels. The polar bear, 1,600 pounds, 10 feet in length, the largest land carnivore on Earth. 4 inches of blubber block temperatures of -40 degrees. 2 layers of dense fur trap deadly heat. Massive paws sink into thin ice without breaking it. It hunts with absolute patience, hours motionless beside breathing holes, waiting for seals. One explosive strike, 1,200 pounds of force per square inch. Seals are 90% of its diet. Fat-rich prey, predictable, abundant across infinite Arctic ice. The Amazon rainforest is its perfect nemesis. 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 100% humidity. 200-foot canopy blocks the sky. 30-foot visibility through impenetrable vegetation. White silence replaced by cacophony of monkeys, insects, invisible predators. There are no seals here. Tapirs, capybaras, peccaries, dispersed, elusive. Jaguars with devastating bite force, 1,000-pound black caimans, anacondas. The blubber that saves the bear in the Arctic becomes an internal furnace here, designed to retain heat where it must desperately expel it. Limited sweat glands. Heat stress begins at 50 degrees. Here it faces 90 with absolute humidity. Heat collapse isn't a risk, it's a timer. Botflies burrow into flesh. Insect-transmitted parasites. Fungal infections in perpetual moisture. Its Arctic immune system has no memory of tropical threats, no evolved defenses against the invisible. Millions of years created the perfect hunter for ice. The same process created the perfect jungle to destroy it. This isn't about strength. It's absolute biological incompatibility. Now let's place the Arctic predator in the green inferno and time its collapse. Critical adaptability assessment, thermoregulation. Crisis. This represents the polar bear's most immediate and catastrophic challenge. Polar bears are engineered to prevent heat loss. In the Amazon, they would face the opposite problem: catastrophic heat gain. Their thick blubber layer and dense fur, essential in the Arctic, become deadly liabilities in tropical heat. Polar bears begin experiencing heat stress at temperatures above 50 degrees Fahrenheit when active. In the Amazon's 90-degree heat, with near total humidity, their ability to dissipate heat would be critically compromised. Unlike many mammals, bears have limited sweat glands, relying primarily on panting, seeking shade, and behavioral thermoregulation. The metabolic heat generated by a 200-pound polar bear moving through dense jungle vegetation, combined with ambient temperature and humidity, would create a potentially fatal thermal burden within hours. Heat stroke, characterized by confusion, collapse, organ failure, and death, would be an ever-present threat. Hydration requirements. To combat heat stress, A polar bear would require dramatically increased water intake, potentially 15 to 20 gallons daily, compared to the minimal water intake needed in the Arctic, where they obtain most hydration from their prey. While water is abundant in the Amazon, accessing it safely presents challenges. Hunting adaptation challenges. Polar bears hunt using patient ambush tactics on open ice, a strategy rendered completely ineffective in dense jungle. Their primary prey, seals, don't exist in the Amazon. Adapting to hunt terrestrial rainforest mammals would require learning to track prey through dense vegetation using scent, developing stealth movement capabilities in cluttered environments, adapting to prey that can climb, swim rapidly in rivers, or escape into burrows, overcoming the disadvantage of white fur in a green environment. Their massive size, advantageous on ice, becomes a liability in the jungle, where breaking branches and disturbed vegetation would announce their presence to every animal within hundreds of yards. Locomotion difficulties. Polar bears evolved for traversing ice and swimming in cold water. The rainforest floor presents obstacles unknown in their natural habitat: tangled vines, fallen logs, muddy terrain, steep slopes, and seasonal flooding. Their wide paws, perfect for distributing weight on ice, would sink deeply into muddy ground. Physiological limitations. The polar bear's metabolism, optimized for processing high-fat seal blubber, would struggle with the leaner meat of rainforest mammals. Their digestive system is specialized for carnivory. While they can eat vegetation opportunistically, rainforest plants offer insufficient calories for an animal of their size. Disease and parasite vulnerability. Arctic animals have limited immunological experience with tropical parasites and pathogens. A polar bear would have no evolved defenses against Amazon-specific threats: botfly larvae that burrow into flesh, leishmaniasis parasites transmitted by sandfly bites, bacterial infections that thrive in heat and humidity, or fungal infections that colonize skin and respiratory systems. Possible behavioral adaptations. If a polar bear could survive initial heat shock, potential adaptations might include becoming primarily nocturnal to avoid peak heat, spending maximum time in water to regulate temperature, seeking elevated terrain or caves for cooler microclimates, switching to a scavenging strategy rather than active hunting, targeting aquatic prey like caimans or capybaras at water edges. Day 1. The arrival. The massive white bear emerges from hypothetical transport at the rainforest edge just before dawn, when temperatures hover at their daily minimum of 75 degrees. Already, this is warmer than the polar bear has experienced in its life outside of heated dens. Within 30 minutes of beginning to explore, the animal is panting heavily. The forest assaults the bear's senses with unfamiliar stimuli. The Arctic's relative silence is replaced by a cacophony of howler monkeys, screaming pihas, and buzzing insects. The clean, sharp scents of ice and seal are overwhelmed by the thick, layered smells of decaying vegetation, flowering plants, and the musk of countless unseen animals. By mid-morning, with the temperature climbing toward 88 degrees, the polar bear is in distress. It seeks water instinctively, crashing through vegetation toward the sound of flowing water. The river offers temporary relief. The bear submerges itself, finding that the water, while warmer than it would prefer, provides crucial cooling. But the current is stronger than expected, and the muddy bottom offers no solid footing like Arctic sea ice. Days 2 through 7. The crisis window. The bear's behavior becomes increasingly desperate as the thermal crisis deepens. It remains in or near water for 18 to 20 hours per day, emerging only during the coolest pre-dawn hours to search for food. Hunger gnaws constantly. The bear hasn't eaten since arrival, and its stored fat, while substantial, is depleting rapidly due to heat stress metabolism. On the fourth night, driven by starvation, the bear attempts its first hunt. It detects the scent of capybaras, large rodents gathering at the water's edge. The approach seems promising. Capybaras are semi-aquatic, a familiar element for the bear. But the hunt fails catastrophically. The bear's white coat is visible even in moonlight. The capybaras scatter long before the bear can close the distance, their alarm calls alerting every animal within earshot. The bear tries scavenging, using its powerful sense of smell to locate a jaguar kill, a partially consumed peccary wedged in a tree fork. Reaching it requires climbing, something polar bears can do but not efficiently. The bear manages to retrieve the carcass, but the meat is already decomposing in the heat, crawling with fly larvae. The bear consumes it anyway, driven by hunger. Week 2. Adaptation attempts. The bear has discovered a partially submerged cave along a riverbank where cooler water flows through. This becomes its refuge during daylight hours. The animal is losing weight rapidly, perhaps 40 pounds in 2 weeks, a dangerous rate even for a creature with substantial reserves. Its white fur is no longer white. Mud, algae, and vegetation stains have turned it a mottled brownish gray, providing marginally better camouflage. Paradoxically, this degradation might improve hunting prospects. The bear modifies its hunting strategy. Instead of stalking, it employs an ambush technique at a narrow point in the river where capybaras must pass. The bear submerges itself in shallow water, remaining motionless for hours, a variation on its ice-hole seal hunting technique. The patience pays off. A capybara swims within range. The bear explodes from the water with the same devastating speed it would use on a seal. The capybara dies instantly in the bear's jaws. It's the first successful kill, providing perhaps 35 pounds of meat, less than a third of what a ringed seal would offer, but desperately needed calories. Week 4. The declining trajectory. Despite the successful hunt, the bear is deteriorating. Its coat, once magnificent insulation, is becoming a liability in other ways. Matted and damp, it provides breeding ground for fungi. Skin infections appear, particularly in folds and areas of constant moisture. The bear scratches constantly, creating wounds that refuse to heal in the humid environment. Parasites have found their host. Botfly larvae burrow beneath the skin, creating painful, infected nodules. The bear has no behavioral strategy to address this unfamiliar threat. In the Arctic, parasites are minimal. Here they are constant. The bear's hunting success rate remains low, perhaps 1 kill every 4 to 5 days, insufficient for its caloric needs. It has learned to eat certain fruits and palm hearts, but these provide minimal nutrition for an obligate carnivore. Its body is now metabolizing muscle tissue to supplement depleting fat reserves. On the 27th day, the bear encounters a black caiman, a 20-foot reptile weighing over 1,000 pounds. In the Arctic, the polar bear would be unchallenged. Here, in the caiman's element, the outcome is uncertain. The two apex predators regard each other warily from opposite banks before the bear, recognizing a threat it cannot easily overcome, retreats. Week 6. The critical threshold. The bear has lost approximately 250 pounds, nearly 20% of its body mass. Its movements are lethargic. The heat, once causing constant panting distress, now barely registers because the bear's metabolism is shutting down, entering a semi-starvation state. A new threat emerges, the rainy season's flooding. The bear's cave refuge is submerged. It must find new shelter, expending precious energy. It locates higher ground, but this area is within a jaguar's territory. The jaguar, a 200-pound male, would normally avoid an animal the bear's size, but it recognizes weakness. They encounter each other at a tapir kill. The bear arrived to scavenge, unaware the jaguar was resting nearby after making the kill. The jaguar doesn't flee. Instead, it performs a threat display, snarling and advancing. The polar bear, even weakened, is still 3 times the jaguar's weight. It rises on hind legs, a 9-foot display of residual power. The jaguar retreats, but not far. It follows the bear for the next 2 days, watching, waiting. Predators recognize when apex becomes vulnerable. Week 8. The verdict approaches. The bear finds temporary respite during an unusual cool period when temperatures drop to 70 degrees for 3 consecutive days. Its condition stabilizes marginally. It makes several successful hunts, targeting young caimans at the water's edge. Dangerous prey, but its powerful jaws can crush even armored skulls. But the parasites are winning. Infections are spreading. The bear's immune system, evolved for Arctic conditions, is overwhelmed by tropical pathogens. It develops a respiratory infection, possibly fungal, causing labored breathing. On the 55th day, the bear makes a critical decision, driven by biological imperative it cannot understand. It begins traveling downstream, seeking something cooler, somewhere with more abundant prey, somewhere closer to the world it was designed for. But the Amazon stretches for millions of square miles in every direction. There is no path back to ice. Survival probability, less than 5%. The brutal scientific reality is that a polar bear has virtually no chance of long-term survival in the Amazon rainforest. This is not a failure of the polar bear as a species. It is simply a profound mismatch between organism and environment. Primary limiting factor: thermoregulation failure represents an insurmountable barrier. Even with behavioral adaptations like nocturnal activity and water immersion, a polar bear cannot sustainably dissipate the metabolic heat generated by a 1,000+ pound mammal in 90-degree heat with 90% humidity. Chronic heat stress would lead to organ damage, immune suppression, and eventually system failure. Secondary limiting factors: insufficient prey density and accessibility, inability to hunt effectively in dense vegetation, disease and parasite vulnerability, competition from specialized jungle predators, nutritional mismatch, high-fat Arctic diet versus leaner tropical prey, maximum survival estimate, under optimal conditions, discovery of a cool microclimate, access to aquatic prey, absence of major competitors, favorable hunting luck, a young, healthy polar bear might survive 3 to 6 months. Most individuals would likely succumb within 4-8 weeks. Necessary conditions for extended survival. For survival beyond 6 months, a polar bear would require access to underground caves or high-elevation areas offering temperatures below 60 degrees, proximity to rivers with abundant slow-moving aquatic prey, seasonal temperature variations, providing periodic cool periods, absence of major disease outbreaks or parasitic infestation, rapid behavioral adaptation to new hunting strategies. Even with all these conditions met, survival beyond 1 year approaches impossibility. The broader reflection. This simulation reveals a fundamental truth about evolution and adaptation. Specialization, while enabling dominance in one environment, creates profound vulnerability when that environment changes or is lost. The polar bear's plight in the Amazon is not hypothetical in the broader sense. Climate change is transforming the Arctic, reducing sea ice extent and duration. Polar bears already face a version of this challenge as their ice platform literally melts beneath them. While not as dramatic as being transported to the Amazon, the progressive loss of their specialized habitat presents a similar biological problem. A supremely adapted creature facing environmental conditions outside its evolved parameters. Evolution operates on geological timescales, thousands to millions of years. Environmental change driven by human activity operates on decadal timescales. The gap between these timelines represents the space where extinction occurs. The Amazon rainforest itself teaches a different lesson: that the greatest diversity of life emerges not from specialization to extremes, but from complex, stable environments where countless niches allow countless strategies to coexist. The rainforest hosts generalists and specialists, but none so narrowly adapted that they could not shift, adjust, or relocate within that vast ecosystem. The polar bear in the Amazon is a thought experiment, but it echoes across the natural world wherever habitat loss, fragmentation, or climate disruption forces species beyond their adaptive limits. It reminds us that evolution builds organisms for specific worlds, and when those worlds disappear, the organisms cannot simply will themselves to change. Nature's balance is not fragile in the sense of being delicate, it is fragile in the sense of being specific, calibrated through millennia to particular conditions. Change those conditions too rapidly, and even apex predators, the most powerful, successful animals in their domains, become vulnerable. The polar bear would not survive the Amazon. The question facing us is whether the polar bear will survive the changing Arctic, and whether we will recognize that its struggle is a window into the struggles of countless species, as the environments that shape them transform beyond recognition. Nature builds every species for a specific world. If you want to explore more stories where biology meets survival, and where evolution faces its ultimate tests, subscribe to Beyond Habitat. New episodes every week. Because beyond every habitat, there is a story waiting to be uncovered.